Hello and welcome to this video on averages from frequency tables. So we're going to get straight into the questions here then. So just before I'll let you have a go at this question, just to sort of talk through what a frequency table is. So it's essentially a way of presenting data. So the frequency, this is the key word here, shows you how frequently that data occurred essentially. So we've got this game, the data about a game that's been shown here and the number of points. So what this column is essentially showing you that 9 people scored 0 points. Then here we've got 11 people scoring 1 point, 18 people scoring 2 points, and so on. So the first question I'd like you to try is I'd like you to work out the mean number of points in the game, and then I would like to know the mode number of points scored. So if you pause your video and have a go. Okay, let's take a look at the answer to this one then. So usually for the mean, we would add up the numbers and then divide by however many numbers we've got. Well, to start with here, we don't know how many numbers we have, so we need to add them up. And to figure out that, we add up the frequency. So if you add up your frequency column, you will see here that we have 50 games. Okay, so sometimes it will tell you that in the question, but on this question it does not. But you add up your frequency column, we've got 50. So we are at some point going to have to divide by 50 because there's 50 items of data. Now, the adding up bit we do slightly differently on frequency tables. So here, if we look at this column, we've got 11 scores of 1. Well, instead of adding up 1 11 times, it's much more efficient to do that as a multiplication. So essentially what we need to do here is multiply each row. So we can start with 0 times 9, that's just 0. 1 times 11 is 11. And that's a much better way of doing this than doing 1, add 1, add 1, add 1, add 1, add. It's just much more efficient. We can do 2 times 18, which is 36. 3 7s are 21, 4 4 16, and 5 1s are 5. And then it's those numbers that we need to add together. So the numbers that we get when we do the points times by the frequency. So when we add those together, we end up with 89. And if we do 89 divided by 50, you get 1.78 points. So the mean average points per game is 1.78. So if we look at the mode then, mode's a little bit more straightforward. We've got a mode of 2. The reason it's 2 is because if you look at the frequency, 2 points has the highest frequency. So that score appears more often than all of the other scores. Okay, another frequency table here for you then. This time, extra thing to do, we've got the median as well. So if you pause your video and have a go. Okay, let's take a look at this then. So first of all, we're working out the mean number of cups drunk of coffee. Well, if we add up the frequency, we've got 22. So there's 22 people that have been surveyed. And then we've got to do the cups of coffee times by the frequency for each row. So we've got 2 times 1 there, which is 2. 3 times 3, 9. 4 5s 20. 5 8s is 40. And 6 5s is 30. And then it's those numbers we need to add up to get the total number of cups of coffee. So if we add all of those numbers up, we get 101. And then if we divide that by the 22 people to 2 decimal places, this would be 4.59. If you did work it out to 1 decimal place, 4.6 would be an acceptable answer for that. Let's have a look at the median then. So this is slightly different now. Now the median, remember, is usually the middle value, was always the middle value. But we haven't got these numbers written out in order here. So what we'd do is if we do 22 divided by 2, because there's 22 values, remember, that gives you 11. So that means the 11th item in this list is going to be the median. So what that means in this context is the median is going to be 5. And the reason it's going to be 5 is because we've got one value here. If we add on here this one, add on 3, we get 4. So the first 4 numbers are either 2 or 3. If we add on the 5, we get 9. So the first 9 numbers are either 2, 3 or 4. But then when you add this 8 on, you get to the 17th value. So the 10th value has got to be, sorry, the 11th value has got to be here. Right, let's take a look at the mode. So the mode, remember, is the most common value. So if we take a look at this, we've got the mode there. So the mode number of cups of coffee is 5 because this has a frequency of 8, which is the highest frequency. Okay, so on our third question here, we've got what's known as a grouped frequency table. So here we don't know exact values, we know the sort of rough value. We know, for example, in this situation with tomato plants, we know that these tomato plants are somewhere between 140 and 150 centimetres. So I would like to have a go at this question now. So we've got 3 questions here. We want to estimate the mean height, and the reason it's an estimate is because we don't know the exact values. I'd like you to do the modal class interval and work out which class interval contains the median. Okay, let's take a look at the mean then. So remember, this is an estimate because we do not know the exact values, and you'll see why it's an estimate when I show you the working out for this. So because we don't know the exact values, we need to work out what is known as the midpoint for each of these intervals. So that's the halfway point between the 2 values we are given. So here it's going to be 145 centimetres, 155 here, 165 here, 175 there, and then it's going to be 190 on the end, because you'll notice on this final interval we've gone up by 20 centimetres here instead of 10 like all the others. So these are the values we are going to be using within our estimate rather than using exact values. Now the first step again is to obviously work out how many values we've got, like we did on the earlier frequency tables, and to do that we can add up all of our frequencies, which will give us 60. So there are 60 tomato plants in this scenario. Then we've got to multiply our midpoint by our frequency. So you might, obviously I haven't got enough space on here, but you might draw an extra column on the end there which has midpoint multiplied by frequency written at the top of it. But we don't need to necessarily draw that, so we can do 145 times 7 for the first row, 155 times 10 for the second row, 165 times 15 for that third row, 175 times 19 for that fourth row, and 190 times 9 for that fifth row. If you add all of that up, you get 10,075, so that's the total height of all of the tomato plants, and then if you divide that by 60, we get a mean height of 167.9 centimetres. So the main difference with these, remember, is we're using the midpoints to do our estimate rather than the exact values like we were in the first 2 tables. Okay, modal class interval, very similar to the first bit. You need to look at the highest frequency, and as we can see here, this class interval is the highest frequency. So we actually need to write down the full class interval there. We don't write down a specific value like we did on the standard frequency table. So we need to write down this 170 and 180 on either end there of those inequality symbols. Median, very similar again. We had 60 values, so if we half 60 we get 30, and that tells us that the median has got to be in here because we've got our first 17 values up to there, and as we add on this 15 we get up to the 32nd value here. So We've got our class interval there. Question 4 then, final question now. I would like you to have a go at these 3 questions. Okay, so on this one then we did actually know we knew the total frequency already because it does tell us in the wording of the question, so we knew all of that added up to 20. So now we've got to look at our median, our mean first. So if you multiply each midpoint by the frequency, so 17.5 is your midpoint for the first one, 22.5 is the midpoint for the second row, so we multiply that by 6. 27.5 is the midpoint for the third row, so we multiply that by 7. And 35 is the midpoint for the final row, and we multiply that by 4 to get 140. If we add up all of those numbers, we get 430, and we've got 20 values in this table. So if we divide that 430 by 20, we should get 21.5 minutes as our estimate for the mean. Okay, modal class interval, nice and easy on this one. It's got to be that one because that has the highest frequency. And median, we've got 20 values, remember, so if we do 20 divided by 2, that tells us our 10th value has got to be the median, and we'll see that that appears in there because we've only got the first 9 values in the first 2 intervals. Okay, and that is it for this video, so thank you very much for listening. I hope you found that useful, and I'll see you all again for another video, so please hit subscribe.